You've probably seen these videos all over YouTube that talk about how AAA games have sort of had a decline in quality, and of course, I generally agree with that statement. However, for me the biggest issue with the lazy slop that gets put out by these big companies now isn't actually the games being bad, because, you know, you can still have fun in a bad game. What the fuck? Personally, I think the main issue is how vapid and lifeless the worlds these games are set in feel. This is an ever-increasing issue that I see, and although yes, some AAA games have managed to nail their worlds perfectly, most have actually somehow regressed in making their worlds feel lively. Even with all the huge advancements in technology that allow for things like, you know, greater population density for example. So humour me for a few minutes here and let me rant about how modern games just can't seem to bring their worlds to life. To start this video off, I'd like to do a quick English lesson. Brilliant start to the video, I know, I can already hear you cheering behind the screen, but this is kind of important and I'm not going to make it long, so don't worry. Basically, all I'm going to do is explain what the word vapid means with some help from my absolutely amazing art skills in MS Paint. I'm too poor to hire an animator, so here it goes. Don't laugh now, alright? Now, I understand that most of you probably already know what this word means, but I'm still going to go over it for the people who might not exactly know what the correct definition is. Oh, and also, I do just want to let my English language nerd side show, so just, you know, indulge me here. So according to Google, the word vapid means offering nothing that is stimulating or challenging, or in other words, like it says here, bland. See, let me just clear this up straight away. Vapid seems like it means empty, like a desert for example, but it really doesn't. Instead, vapid simply means dull and mind-numbing, and of course also kind of boring. And yeah, that's it for my English lesson. I did tell you it was going to be short, so moving on from that and my amazing artwork, there is one other thing I'd like to point out before really getting into the video. The games that I'm going to be talking about slash referencing don't really have empty worlds. They have plenty of assets and other things to look at, but they're simply boring and lifeless. And of course, this doesn't apply to every game, so just keep in mind that some games like Elden Ring, for example, still have amazing worlds, and I'm not grouping games like that with the shitters I'm going to talk about later. And now I'd like to give you a pretty good example of vapidness. Forza 5. A bit of a weird choice since, you know, it's a car game, but just hear me out here. Forza 5's world is absolutely uninspired, unfiltered dog shit. This world feels like it's dead, and it's not just because it's set in a desert. Forza has already had a deserty setting before in Horizon 3, and that world was vibrant and actually felt lived in and alive. But here, it's just a fucking ghost town. I mean, even the NPCs look like zombies. So why couldn't Horizon 5 replicate Horizon 3's liveliness? Well, personally, I think there's two reasons: profit and complacency. Horizon as a franchise was always meant to attract a large audience because Xbox needed a special car game in their catalogue for all the car fans, but up until Horizon 4, the series was mostly limited to the people who were already on Xbox and just felt like playing a racing car game. However, with the release of Horizon 4, this all changed, and a lot of people, including me, purchased an Xbox just to play this game because holy shit did it look good. And also, everybody played this. Every single one of my mates, even the people who were PlayStation fanboys, owned Forza Horizon 4. It was insane. Now this was amazing for Microsoft, but for everybody else, yeah, definitely not. Now that Microsoft had captured a huge audience, they knew that they could just be complacent while still raking in profit even if they had made a subpar game with a subpar setting. So of course, unsurprisingly, that is exactly what they did. See, I think Horizon 5 lacks the lively worlds of prior games because to Microsoft, it just simply doesn't matter. Profit will still come in because a huge amount of people will still try this game just to see what it's like. And at least to me, it's clear that Microsoft made the developers of this game focus less on the setting and shifted them over to focus more on how else they could monetize the game. So now we Forza players have to put up with this for the next few years. Looks really interesting, doesn't it? Moving away from Forza, this is present in many other games. I mean, another example I just randomly jotted down in my script is Skull and Bones. I know it's basically all the rage to shit on this game right now, but there's a very good reason for that. It's straight up just a shit live service game, and I mean, realistically, what did people expect? It's live service. Anyway, it's pretty clear that Skull and Bones had some huge hype around it. Hell, even I decided to break my golden rule of not getting hyped for live service AAA games and decided to join in with the fun. But the thing is, it's clear that Ubisoft was just using this game as a filler and a cash cow and basically nothing else. There just doesn't seem to be a single drop of passion within the world of this game. And holy shit, you can tell. Even though there's tons of assets and at a first glance everything seems to look really nice and alive, if you stick around for long enough you'll realize that compared to this game's predecessor, which is Assassin's Creed 4 in my opinion, this game just feels so clinical and kind of dead. And trust me, it's not just the weird water physics either. And again, I think this is because of that amazing complacency that Ubisoft just seems to have a knack for. This stupid complacency because of profit is detrimental to so many big studios. Clearly the big corpos sat upstairs are drawing more and more developers away from making interesting worlds and limiting their creativity all in the name of profit, and frankly, yeah, you can tell. And honestly, I'm not even sure if these companies are trying to hide it. They seem to have forgotten that if they make a shit product, over time, even the most dedicated fans will just stop paying for it. They keep stabbing themselves in the back because they believe that in the short term, releasing a subpar game with, you know, some really good monetization features will grant them more profit, and whilst they are sort of right, in the long term, I think it just absolutely kills the game and actually makes them miss out on a lot more profit. And I'm not sure why, but they just can't seem to realize that for some reason. Or maybe I just know nothing about the game industry, I don't know. Another pretty big thing that comes of this complacency and hunger for profit is the reuse of assets. Now, the actual reuse of assets isn't necessarily a bad thing. There are plenty of older and newer games that reuse assets and integrate it into the game world pretty well. The issue I have with a lot of AAA games is how they reuse those assets. From personal experiences, I feel that developers of the past gave a lot more thought to how they reuse assets, but also make them look different using, you know, things like lighting. But recently I just see AAA devs chucking around the same few rock assets all over the place, without even bothering to even slightly change the texture or do something cool with the lighting to make it seem like a different one. And I don't blame these devs. I understand that making games is really hard. I mean, I couldn't do it even if I tried. Instead, of course, I blame the fucking corpos sat upstairs who just want everything rushed and done as quickly and efficiently as possible. Moving on, I think there's another pretty huge reason as to why a lot of the open world AAA games have these lifeless and vapid worlds. And this one is pretty simple. It's just the lack of passion and creativity when it comes to creating these games. Let me run you through a hypothetical here, and yes, I am going to be using more of my beautiful Microsoft Paint artwork, so, you know, prepare yourselves. Let's say you sign on to be an employee at Ubisoft and they tell you, oh, we're going to put you to work on our latest quadruple A game. And you get there, sit down at your desk, talk to the rest of your team, and just look at what's been done so far and just think, what the actual fuck is this? This is no quadruple A game. Of course you're going to feel pretty rough at that point. You were hyped up to be working on this next gen game, and instead you're working on this game that could hardly even be called fun. And of course at that point your passion for the game will waver and you will just want to get this done and over with as quickly as possible and move on to the next game, which, you know, might actually be good for once. Or at least that's what I think would happen, because really, I don't know, the only game dev experiences I've had is making shit games in Python for a computer science course. But honestly, it isn't surprising that a lot of the worlds that come out in these recent games are just uninspired garbage, because, I mean, if you already know the game is going to be bad, why would you as a developer who isn't given enough time or money to put up with this shit try to build an interesting world? There's just no reason to put that much time and effort into something that you're just not passionate about anymore. And I'm just gonna say this once again, it is definitely not the developer's fault. It's the fault of the, you know, big people sat upstairs who just build up developers' hopes and then shatter them because, you know, they have to work on this shit. Moving on from that stupid little hypothetical I set up, when compared to some indie games, it's clear that the passion for a lot of AAA projects just isn't there. Indie games are usually just made by a bunch of close mates who typically tend to have complete creative control and are fully dedicated to making something great because, you know, they're still small. If they don't get this right, then their whole careers could pretty much go up in flames. Also, like I said before, indie games are usually made by a small group of people or maybe just one person, and that group of people or person can do whatever they want without having to worry about a company's reputation or, you know, profit or some shit like that. And of course, they don't have shitty higher-ups to fight to get a good idea implemented into the game they're making, and obviously aren't being forced to make a game that they aren't really invested in the first place. Like, it is straight up just their idea. They're not trying to make someone else's world into a reality, so 9 out of 10 times the setting in an indie game is going to be much more interesting than the setting of a AAA game because the indie developers have full creative control and can basically implement whatever they feel like with, like, no restrictions pretty much. Now, before I shut up, there is one thing that I feel tends to bring down the liveliness of some worlds, and this one, it might cause a little stir, I guess. Personally, I think that whilst all the recent advancements in graphics and lighting are really cool, they do also tend to bring the liveliness of some game worlds down quite a lot. Really realistic graphics can definitely enhance the world because, you know, most of these games are set in real-life historical locations, so having a world with over-realistic graphics does actually make sense. But when it comes to, like, again, Forza 5, it kind of does make less sense because the thing is, this is meant to be an arcade racing game. It's meant to be bright and colourful and have these really cool explosive moments. And whilst Forza 5 does have that with all the showcase events, to be totally honest, they're kind of brought down by these hyper-realistic, kind of bland graphics. And the other thing about this game is that it's really colour accurate, but honestly, being color accurate, it kind of drains the life out of the world in this game. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that everything has to be super vibrant, Samsung display levels of saturation, but come on, look at the recent Need for Speed games. They are absolutely beautiful and blend a realistic color palette with some really over-the-top colors and insane unrealistic effects. And yeah, I get it's not for everyone, but personally, I think this looks amazing. I mean, even the games before Forza 5, their graphics, whilst technically worse, actually still looked better somehow. And I do think this is partially because of the extremely vibrant and realistic colors in some cases. Because let me just tell you now, Britain has never ever looked this vibrant during summertime or, you know, this white during winter. Usually everything somehow has that classic grey British tint that makes everything look kind of depressing. So yeah, if any Forza developers or something are watching, please just spice up those colours just a tad, because holy shit does Mexico look really, really bland in this game, and I cannot believe it actually looks like this in real life. And hell, if it does, fucking spice it up anyway, I beg. And the thing is, it's not just racing games that suffer from this. A lot of regular first/third person open world games do as well. Yes, realism is amazing, and I do love stuff like the New York from Spider-Man, but for some games, it does just kind of limit the amount of creativity the devs can do, because most consumers now want and expect everything to look hyper-realistic and squeaky clean. But when you look back, let's say 20 years ago, when graphics were nowhere near as good, surprisingly, worlds just tended to be more interesting and much less vapid. And I think that's because they were far more stylized when it comes to graphics and just didn't really need to be realistic in the first place, so all the developers could just make their worlds as batshit crazy and interesting as possible without having to factor in, you know, real life stuff like physics. Or at least that's what I think anyway. This specific point is definitely personal preference, so I'll just let you judge for yourselves if you like more realistic worlds or not. But personally, yeah, it's just not for me. So, what should companies do to fix their vapid worlds? Well, I'm gonna be honest here, I'm not exactly sure, but I do have one or two ideas. But I am very sure that you don't need to spend millions and millions of pounds or dollars, whatever you want to say, on a game to make the setting look good. There's this game called Persona 3 Reload that I've been playing recently, and yes, I know, Persona fans, boo, whatever. But the world in this game feels absolutely amazing, and it's pretty pretty clear that a lot of the budget went to other places. I mean, just look at this, right? These characters, they don't even have proper faces. In fact, basically everybody you never talk to doesn't have faces, and it's clear that their character models are less detailed than the ones who are actually important to the story. But somehow, even though these characters are faceless and don't really move around, this world still feels incredibly alive, other than that one club that is just absolutely awful. What the fuck were you thinking here, Atlas? The thing is, right, the world for this game doesn't feel vapid because it kind of has an equal balance of everything. The population density, while not immense, feels believable and everything seems lively. The colors are vibrant and help really make this world shine and really brings it to life. There also isn't any copy and pasted textures that feel out of place, and surprisingly, the sound is amazing and really does help make this world feel more lively. And honestly, I couldn't tell you why. I'm a YouTuber, not some psychology analyst person, so basically all I can say is, yeah, sound design is great in this game and somehow builds on this world. Now, although I'm not exactly sure what these AAA studios should do to spice up their worlds, I can sort of give you the general idea. Just more balance. Rather than spending more money on monetizing and advertising the games, just throw in a tiny bit more money into something like the previously mentioned sound design, or maybe hire some more people to work on the color grading or textures of this game. Realistically, these small improvements can actually make a world feel so much more vibrant and alive, in my opinion, and honestly, I think it's totally worth it even for the big fuckers sat upstairs in suits, because yeah, more people will engage with their games, and when it comes to buy some DLC or something, I am pretty much certain that people will. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on this topic. To sum everything up, yes, game worlds have definitely slowly become more vapid over time. Granted, obviously not all of them, but a lot of the worlds I see just aren't as immersive anymore, and that really is a shame, because to me at least, the main thing I look for in big open world games is how immersive and vibrant their worlds are. And honestly, if this trend keeps on going and we see less and less developers and big studios focusing on the setting of their games and more on how to monetize them, truthfully, I probably won't even bother buying many AAA games. So yeah, that's basically all I had to say. Thank you for listening to me ramble for like 20 minutes, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and yeah, bye, whatever, I guess I'll see you in a few days.